Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have you join us for another episode of Right Off Track. Today, I have an amazing guest joining me, and he's coming from another side of the world, so I'm excited to have an early morning chat with him because I know it's going to brighten up my day. Today, I have Earl Talbot. Am I pronouncing that right? Oh,
That's correct,
got
100%.
it. Started the day off right already. And he is a human code breaker. Earl combines his keen interest in ancient wisdom from indigenous culture and new technology, such as NLP and coaching, to facilitate transformational experiences and inspires his clients to live on purpose. And I'm excited to dive into that because I know besides that brief description, there's so much wisdom to unpack. So, Earl, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and thank you for inviting me. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, we had a conversation a few weeks ago and we were just twinning and it's just a really super exciting conversation. So, looking to see where this can go in the podcast.
Same here. I'm so excited. I know twinning was like what the word that came to mind. We share a lot of alignment, and at the same time, we're so different. So I'm excited
Yeah.
to share like the things that we can, like where we're growing and when we can learn from each other, and things that also inspire both of us. But I want to dive into you because you've been doing your work for a long time, right? You talked about if anybody's following Earl on LinkedIn, which he should, or on his site, he has had a long journey from like ups and downs and going off and off track and like going from the corporate world and finding his way. So can you share a little bit about that? I know there's a lot to unpack, but like maybe some key off track moments and where that brought you to.
Yeah. And thank you for that introduction. And I think the key thing for me was, and I think this speaks to so many people, which is I was living the life that I was told I should live.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what was happening. That you go to college, you go to school, you get a job, you get a good job, you buy a new house, you get married, have children, whatever society and community tells us. And I was living that life, and it was okay for a while until it wasn't. And what I found was that I wasn't living in alignment with who I was and what made me inspired or fulfilled. So I was working in the tech sales. I was working in sales as a sales professional in the technology department of ISPs and telco organizations. And I was making good money, but I was so unfulfilled. It didn't feel meaningful. And that was my introduction to going off track. And my first off track moment was going to a place called Sedona in Arizona and doing a soul recharge retreat. And I hadn't even heard of a retreat at that point. I was in my 30s,
Yeah.
maybe 29, early 30s. I'd never had a massage. I'd never been on a retreat. I'd never done any of the things that they were expecting me to do. So that was really fascinating. It was a big eye opener, and that really took me on this journey of actually what do I want for my life, not what other people want for my life.
Uh, Very good point. And one thing that caught my ear is that you were mentioning that being out of alignment and that it was just felt like,
Yeah.
right. Could you maybe talk about like where other people, maybe people you work with, how they feel maybe they're out of alignment and what kind of work you do to help them around that?
Yeah. So I suppose the key thing is for me is I work primarily with solopreneurs. And solopreneurs are people who, the way that I see it, aren't just people who are self-employed and trying to do their own business. These are people that are crafting their own life on their own terms. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by living on purpose. You're in line with what inspires you, what you find fulfilling, what you find meaningful, and you're having the external impact that actually makes a difference to you. So there's this whole inner outer alignment. So the first thing is to note that when I say solopreneurs, some of my clients are actually people who are employed. So it's not just about being self-employed. It's actually about, are you crafting a life on your own terms? And the first thing that needs to happen is awareness. If you don't have the awareness, then you're just going to keep doing what you're doing every day, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the first part of alignment. You need to have that awareness. The second part is you need to be intentional. How are you showing up every day? What do you intend to do? Are you actually creating those experiences in life that you want? And what I tend to find is Some people have one intention of, okay, yeah, I'm going to be really successful in everything else so I can enjoy life. And actually, what they find out doing is they're not actually enjoying life, and they're actually being quite miserable and not
Mhm.
happy with their success. So that's a really interesting one when you're unsuccessful. The third one is mindset. So it's really having the right mindset and discipline. And then there is your action. You need to take action, and then it carries on like that. So the alignment really starts with awareness, intention, and then it goes to mindset, and then you take action.
And you touched on a good point, which I feel passionately about, and we can chat about it in a moment. But success, right? There's this definition of like what it is, and there's a, I think, slightly toxic definition, like it has to be money and fame and this
Yeah.
such. And but as you mentioned, oftentimes when we strive for it, we have a goal, it doesn't fulfill us. And so I'm curious if you can unpack that a little bit. Like, how do you help people maybe find a different way, find something that actually does fulfill them, and why is it that we're chasing this success and it doesn't fulfill us?
Yeah. And the reason why we're chasing, this is what I say is it's a term about quickly becoming unsuccessful. And
Hmm.
that's when you climb the ladder of success to find that your ladder's leaning up against the wrong wall, or, you're sailing the boat to success, but you're sailing in the wrong direction, right? It's kind of like you're going
Yeah.
fast and you're doing all the things, but actually you're doing the things that you were taught that
Mm-hmm.
were right for you. And this is part of our conditioning. This is how we are grown in this society, that actually we're born as contributors to the economic situation, not actually to other human beings and how we live and everything else. So a lot of people, in my experience, especially in the corporate world, are living this life of, okay, I do the 9 to 5, I work really hard, I do what my boss tells me, I keep everybody happy, I keep the bills paid, the roof over my head, food on the table, and everything should be fine. Until, guess what? You're no longer valued. You've been made redundant. You get a terrible boss. You're missing the birthdays and the holidays and the school plays of your children. And so you're moving out of alignment from this path that would help to ground you and make you feel kind of fulfilled in life, to actually, I'm spending all my time working and not really feeling that success. And that's what I mean about, the quick road to unsuccessful.
Completely. That makes perfect sense. And so you've obviously been here for a little bit and you do these amazing retreats now. And now, I don't know if there are massages involved. And
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, amazing. You tell us, like, how did you come to now what you're offering? Because I'm sure that process has evolved, like your teaching has evolved. Like, what are you offering now and why are you passionate about that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It actually makes me reflect that I didn't necessarily answer your first question properly. And the key thing here is you know that old saying, you can tell someone something, you can show them how to do it, but when you get them to do it themselves, that's when they really learn. And when I started learning NLP and coaching, like back in 2003 ish, was my first introduction. And I wanted to kind of say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you do it. This is what you need to do. And I was telling people. And what I quickly realized is that it's the experience that makes the difference. When I even looked at my journey, even though I started to learn NLP and coaching and those other things, EFT and hypnotherapy, I learned those things afterwards. The biggest impact was actually having that experience that just really awakened my awareness when I went on that retreat, that soul recharge. So that's the key thing. So my job is to create these transformational experiences, either as one-to-one clients or in retreats or in workshops. So that's the main thing that I'm focused on. So it's really about how to create a profound experience that challenges the status quo and awakens that awareness in a way that people see themselves as differently.
I love that. And I think you and I align on the value of, well, I don't think I'm not religious. I have my spiritual beliefs that But I wonder, like, people something like, oh, NLP, which is not natural language processing. That's like my first place. Like, touch on what that means and what that is. But do you have somebody who's like skeptical, like, oh, that sounds like a little fluffy. We need to just work hard, put in the effort. Like, you just don't have enough drive. Do you have those people who are like, I don't know if all of that fluffy stuff is going to help me? And what would you say to those people?
Yeah, well, there's two things I agree. I mean, spirituality is something that I see, and this comes back from the ancient wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
and spirituality means different things to different people. But even before, in some cultures, there was religion. People understood how to live in symbiosis and in tune with nature, and not over hunting or not over polluting, and so on and so forth. And spirituality for me is just understanding there is a connection between everything, and there are certain dynamics that are at play, and paying attention to that. That's what I kind of see spirituality being. What I love about NLP, neuro linguistic programming, neuro standing for the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Linguistics is the language that we use, and the programming is how we think, how we do what we do. Is it's It allows us to really start to understand how we work, and this is where the human code breaking comes in,
Mm-hmm.
because we all have encoded ourselves in different ways. We all have models that we work towards. And the question really becomes is that model effective or ineffective for you? So just think about computer programming, right? Is this program running the way it's meant to be running, or is it buggy, right?
Yeah.
Is it creating issues? Is it creating conflicts? And so it is a very hands-on type of technology, I would call it, because the person who I'm working with will know whether things are working out for them or not. Do they have conflicts in their beliefs? Do they
Yeah.
have a difference in the way that they're thinking and the way that they're acting? So, for example, hey, guess what? I want to lose weight and be healthy, but then you're eating a donut and having a couple of beers every night and everything else. It's like, well, what's the disconnect? How's that working for you? Why is that not working for you? You don't have a clue, because if you had a clue, you would change it.
Yeah.
So what's the program that you're working? What's the code that you've got running? And let's understand what that is, and let's put it in, recode it so it works effectively for you.
I love that. Like, I love the techie explanation. The dork in me is just happy because, to your point, there are like neurological patterns that are in our brain, right? We talk about neuroplasticity and how the brain changes when you learn something new, but at the same time, we have these old patterns, right? So if you make fun of this or something, but really you have patterns. Like, you think about a habit that you do. Like, if you use one hand and then suddenly you use the other hand for whatever reason, like, oh, this feels odd, right? Just as a simple example. But that's how we are with our bad behaviors too. And if we don't
Yeah.
stop, reflect on that, and be like, well, is this serving me, right? Is this helpful to me? Oftentimes those bad habits, whether they're professional or just whatever's not serving us, will continue on, right? And so I love you working on that to develop new patterns in our brain, just like I said, a program that's more upgrading. You're upgrading your program.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing that is really challenging in terms of the journey to solopreneur from being a corporate life is, if you've lived so long where you've lived somebody else's vision, because this is what happens, right? As children, we tend to live our parents' vision, right? They want us to be doctors, lawyers, whatever it is. They want us to be successful, whatever that means, and whatever that paradigm was.
Yeah.
So what successful was when they were growing up, and when they were in the workforce, is very different to what success is now,
Yeah.
right? So even within the last generation, that's fundamentally changed. So you go from living what your parents' view of success and vision is for you, to what the school and society's view is, and then the workplace. And if you're working in a corporate world, the likelihood is that you're building somebody else's vision, that they want to build a company, sell that off for a few million trillion pounds or dollars or whatever it is, and they're going to do their thing. And somewhere along the line, so many of us get lost from our own vision that we're bought into somebody else. So one of the biggest things is waking people up to that. Hey, what about your vision? What's your vision? And
Yeah.
when you ask them what they want, quite a lot of times people don't know what they want.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, what do you want? And the wake up call for many people is when they're laid off, when they're made redundant.
Just
That's
kind
the
of think
wake
of
up
that.
call,
Yes.
right? Because now you're forced into that situation. You didn't choose it. You're forced into that situation. And now you have to ask yourself, what do I want? Most people kind of scrabble. It's like being thrown overboard on a boat. So guess
Yeah.
what? You scrabble for the next boat or the next lump of wood that you can cling on to, which is the
Yeah.
next job, the next role, no matter what it is. But actually, if you was in a position for someone to say, forget about, the emergencies and everything else. Let's just think about if you really had the time and space to breathe and think about it, what would you want?
Yeah. It's a
And
scary.
most people don't know.
I think
It's
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 scary too.
yeah, yeah. Because it's scary because it's the first step of empowerment. It's you taking responsibility for your vision.
Yeah.
And we're not really taught to take responsibility. We're taught to follow. We're taught to toe the line. We're taught to fit into the boxes and do the status quo. But actually, that's what becomes scary because we're not using those elements that are within us, our intuition, our passion, our emotions, our intellect, all of these things in alignment. And this is where the alignment comes in really key to say, actually, if I want to craft the life that I want to live, what would that look like? And then start to put that into work and put that into practice.
Love that. And my dad likes to say that fear is the worst motivator, and I find that to be true. Right? When I'm motivated, like my actions are motivated by fear, I'm probably not in the right headspace to making the decision, and I have to be very mindful of that. And it's very common for me too to have that, like, oh, I should be doing this, but like, what is actually motivating? Am I calm? Can I see the full picture? And I find that if I am calm and I'm not looking just from the fear side, I'm making probably decisions that are more beneficial to me in the long run.
Yeah, I'd say it's a dance of both. And what you don't want to get stuck in is overwhelming fear. That's the challenge when it's like you can't see the wood through the trees. It's just like the fear is that much. You kind of got to start where you are. So if you're in a place of fear, it's like, okay, acknowledge that and work from. So fear is an away from energy, right? It's like, this is what I don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you've got to be clear about what you don't want to actually be clear on what you do want. So when I'm working with a client, for example, a lot of the times I'll ask them, well, what do you want? And they'll tell me for the next 30 minutes what they don't want. And it's like, okay, do you realize that you've just been telling me what you don't want? Okay. So now
And
we
you're
know that.
yeah, you're like your brain's like, okay, I'm gonna get you what you don't want. You're like so focused on that, right?
Well, actually, what they tend to see is actually they are creating what they don't want.
Right.
So they're saying this is what's happening. I'll tell you what. Okay, classic example. So I was working in sales, and one of the things that was definitely so true in sales, you kind of live and die by your numbers. Your job is if you're not hitting the numbers, you're gonna basically lose your job. And the people that would go on a PIP, a performance improvement plan,
Mm-hmm.
generally that was seen as a kiss of death. And some organizations use it that way. But what would tend to happen is as soon as somebody's numbers weren't hitting a certain average for a while and they were threatened with a PIP or they went on a PIP, you would just see they're just like, I'm going to get the sack. They're going to get rid of me. I'm going to get the sack. I'm going to get the sack. And they're saying what they don't want. And it becomes a mantra. And 9 times out of 10, that's exactly what's going to happen because they
Yeah.
haven't shifted the mindset to turn around. And this is what I'm saying, awareness, intention, and mindset. The mindset of, I'm not going to get the sack. I'm going to do what I need to do to hit the
Yeah.
number and keep my job.
Yeah.
And actually not even keep my job, be the best salesperson.
Yeah.
So what they're doing, and this is how I start to work, is they are encoding, I'm going to get the sack. I'm going to get the sack. That's their code. They're
Yeah.
programming themselves with that code, and people do it all the time.
For sure.
Oh, work's so stressful. Work, I'm so stressed at work. I'm so stressed. It's like, yeah, you're stressed, but what do you want? Because if you're not focused, if you're not aware of it, and you're not intentional about it, and you haven't got the mindset for it, you're going to carry on being stressed.
Absolutely. I heard somebody describe it as a GPS, where
Yeah.
if your mind is like taking you where you give it direction to, right? Or where you put energy. And the more you give it all of these different places of stress and I don't want, then your goal that maybe you have up there, like you're not going to it linearly, you're going to all these other places. So how hard is it going to get to actually a place you want to go if you're always focused on things you don't want? And GPS is like, okay, take a turn, another left turn, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
feel free to comment on it. I was gonna change momentum a little bit and talk about you, because I think if anybody's like listening to it, you can just hear his passion and his calm wisdom, which is the opposite of me. I'm like very energetic, like talking too fast. I need to slow down. And actually, Earl caught me in this. Anya, you don't talk too fast. That's your NLP right there. You need to stop programming it. So thank you, Earl. But
Exactly.
I'm going to take a moment and pivot back a little bit towards your story, because I know that you have a lot of experience, and I'm sure it wasn't an easy path to start, right? Like we talked about the fear and the conditioning that everybody has. So curious, like, what was your journey like? Not just like how you started, but were there any challenges along the way that you can share with others?
Yeah. Yes. Is a short answer. So when you start to craft a life on your own terms, it's a path that no one's ever worked before. And as I said before, we're conditioned to kind of like, oh, be a doctor like uncle such and such, or your cousin, or your older sibling, or whatever it is, or, Johnny up the street. But crafting a life on your own terms means that no one's walked this path before. So you don't know if you're going to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody questions you, as in questions your logic, questions your wisdom, questions your rationale. You
Mm-hmm.
must be crazy. Why are you why are you going to give up a good job to go off and do your own thing? It's very different if you're made redundant. But I chose to walk away from you know a six-figure job, actually more than once,
Mm-hmm.
and in doing so, I felt it probably in some ways saved my life in terms of burnout, and at least gave me a better quality of life. It's given me a better quality of life. So you've got the friction of going against the norm and the status quo of what everybody else is doing, and everybody else just really challenging you. So there's that element. I think the key thing with fear is that, yes, fear is a motivator, and it's to recognize that, and it's to embrace the fear and not let the fear control. For me, it was about not letting the fear control me, and that's where the personal development side for me really came in. It was like, actually, how do I code myself? How do I run myself in a way that I'm responding to fear in a healthy way, but not letting it control me? So
Absolutely.
that was a definite key part of my journey. So I started immersing myself in personal development, and that's why I started to learn things like EFT and hypnotherapy and NLP and everything else. And then I was like, wow, this is really cool. This really works, and I want to share
Yeah.
it with other people. And again, I was kind of like banging this drum and telling everybody, do these things, go on these courses. But that was my path. I eventually recognized that that was my path, and their path is different, and I can use my path to support them on their path, and that's what I started to find more fulfilling and more meaningful. Right? It's not making corporates money and my sales manager and everything else and earning a good commission. Yeah, that's good, but
Mm-hmm.
actually that wasn't really fulfilling for me in life. So it was really about taking that step and being courageous in the face of fear. And that's the thing, courage is only exists in the face of fear.
Yeah.
But I needed to do the work on myself first, and then having the support. So my wife is really supportive. She kind of is able to go with the flow unless I'm pushing the boundaries too much, and then her fear levels go too high, and yeah, and then she pushes back.
Lovely. And speaking of your wife, and I'm so happy you have that support. Like I talked about a little bit of tribe, right? And you have to have maybe a little support in the tribe. But beyond that, like, do you have any suggestions for people who maybe they don't have a support tribe, right? Or maybe they're just not sure how to respond to all the people who are like, they're doing what? Is that a little bit crazy? Do you have suggestions like how to respond to people who maybe don't have support yet, or are trying to find or trying to navigate other people's kind of maybe non-supportive environment when they're trying something new?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who actually that is probably one of the biggest steps of having the right people around you supporting you. And the issue really is when you haven't been showing up authentically anyway, right? Not even consciously, unconsciously, because we've been programmed to be in a certain way. Everybody thinks that you're the person who you're pretending to be, right? Where inside there's so many people who are kind of crying and dying because they haven't been able to show up as who they are, you know, a little bit nerdy, a little bit crazy, a little bit woo woo. You know, I remember when I started on my journey and people were like, oh, you know, you're a god brother, you're a tree hugger, you're, you're this and you're,
Hugging trees. I don't understand that.
yeah. But at that time, it was like, people was just like, you're so weird. What's wrong with you? You
Mhm.
know, and whilst I get it from a perspective of, yes, I became very different, but actually I became more myself.
Mhm.
And for some people, that's scary because what happens, excuse me, what happens is on a personal level, when you're close to somebody, if they start to change, that also forces you to challenge your identity. Because
Mhm.
if I define myself by who you are, and we do this very much in intimate relationships and in families, if my dad is this person, my mum is that person, and I'm that person. If my mum and dad change, then who am I? And
Mhm.
so for a lot of times, people will then challenge you and try to keep you as you are. So one of the things that I used to do in retreats is say, you can't come with somebody who's too close to you. Because
Mhm.
as you're going through your change and your transformation, they're going to try and put you back in your box and kind of say, no, 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 that's not you. Why are you being so weird? And I've seen it act out. I've seen it play up. And so many people have that in their day-to-day life where actually, you know, I'm going to stop drinking. Why
Mhm.
you stop? Why you come out? Just have a couple of drinks with us, you know, just be your fun self, you know, or I'm going to stop eating meat. I'm going to turn vegan. So what's wrong with you? You know, what's wrong with eating meat? You've eaten meat all this time. It hasn't done it. You know, people try to keep you in the box. I'm going to leave my six-figure job and go and do some farming. What's wrong with you? Why are you moving out of the city? Why are you going to be doing farming? We get all of those negative messages, micro and on the larger scale, explicit and implicit.
Absolutely. Yeah, what I found was really how we actually connected, right? Can I share this story? Like we connected on LinkedIn, and it's just because like we had similar posts, and I think that's the beauty is that now there is a lot of other communities that could be also virtual in nature to start off with to find people who are like-minded, right? So I found like I've always had this hunger for like, hey, I want to find this network, and I'm really grateful for my family, but like that crazy, like I want to build something, I want to do something new. I'm a little bit dorky, like finding those people, like that, those twinning moments, like we have, was it came to me through like LinkedIn and building communities that are virtual and finding people who get you, who maybe don't have to be physically next to you. But I think that's the beauty of our technology and the age is that there are people who will get you and support you. And it doesn't have to be even people that you know right now, but know that when you do follow your path and your passion, those people will come out because they will see you doing what you do and your message is going to resonate with them.
Yeah. But here's the trick. Here's the trick, right? You got to show up first so they can see you in that way. And
Yep.
that's the challenge because so many people are hiding. You know, I don't want to be seen in that way, you know, because guess what? My friends and my colleagues are going to look at me in a certain light. And we see this is particularly, as you said, on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
There's things that I post now that are far more vulnerable than I could have ever thought about doing when I was in the corporate workplace. I just
Mm.
wouldn't have I just wouldn't have done it. And what's
Yeah.
quite interesting is through some of those posts, some of my ex-colleagues now have reached out to me. Some of those are now my clients. Some of
Yeah.
those just want to have a conversation because guess what? I'm giving them a little bit of permission to let themselves be themselves because they see me doing it because you know, they've seen me in the work environment where, you know, the corporate buddy
Yeah.
to actually now you can actually be more of yourself. So you've got to be able to show up as well because otherwise we don't have this connection. You wouldn't see me, I wouldn't see you. We'd walk past each other, or we would pass each other on LinkedIn. But when
Yeah.
you show up, that's how you are able to either attract your tribe or start to build your tribe.
Absolutely. And one thing that you mentioned just really resonates with me about our example gives other people permission to also be more themselves, which
Yes.
is why I wanted to share these stories because I think that there's a perception like other people are doing this, or maybe they're already successful, or it's just like out there, some few people. But really, there are so many amazing stories like yours where somebody's building something up and they're creating their own success journey that's meaningful to them, and they're finding that impact. And your story allows other people to say, well, I can be doing something of my own, right? I can, like, and my example isn't just like I thought before, like when I'm doing crazy stuff, like I shouldn't share it because it feels like a little over the top. But
Yeah,
then people would say, like, well, actually, like what you're doing is interesting, and it helped me think about doing X, Y, Z. So I think that to your point, like when we give ourselves the permission to be ourselves and share that, it
yeah.
actually allows other people to also be more authentic in their journey.
Absolutely. I say that the cycle that I see is we give unspoken permission. When we show up as ourselves authentically, we give unspoken permission for other people to do it. So you don't even have to say, you need to do this or this is how you should be. You just show up and people are watching. And again, that's one of the key things with LinkedIn. It's kind of, you know, you can see how many people like or comment on your feeds, and you can see how many impressions it's got. So you can see, there's like 5,000 people that have seen your post
Yeah.
and they don't like or they don't comment. It doesn't mean that they don't like or they haven't got anything to say. It's just that in many respects, they are too fearful of stepping out of the status quo to be seen to be liking or commenting on that thing. And I think the other thing is one of myths of um the myths of I'm doing this work for my family, and again it's that thing of, okay, I want my children to have the freedom and the flexibility to live the life that they want and everything else, but they see you working like a dog and you're not, you're missing all the school plays and everything else. Sorry, 1 second.
Well, you're good. I can edit this. You're so okay.
Yeah, okay. um so they see us working like a dog, and they're going to take what you're doing as the example rather than what you're telling them. So when I look at my parents who came from Jamaica to England and they worked really hard, working back to back shifts and everything else, so you don't have to live this life. For many people, they won't, that I was at the point of I was living that life in a different way because I had a different type of job. But I
Yeah.
wasn't switching off from my job in the way that I could have been doing and should have been doing. It's like, I need to be working harder, need to be working harder. And it was only through an awareness of really listening to that inner voice of there's got to be something more to life than this, that made me to start to go and look what this other in life could be.
So, and when I first had a call with Earl, he was in the park enjoying a beautiful day, playing with his kids. I was like, that's exactly how we want to live. It's just doing something that's meaningful to you with your family, just freely working, in a way
Yeah,
that is aligned to your desires and needs. I love that.
absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like, the dream of success is when you get to 67 or 65 in this country, you can retire and really live your life. But in between that, you've got the weekends and you've got these 2 week holidays or 3 week holidays that you can live.
Hopefully, when you're not
Ho-
working
hope,
on weekends, when you're not.
hopefully, right? That's the vision that's been sold to us. And so
Yeah.
we kind of live this life of, okay, yeah, whereas I'm like, I'm going to go and work, I'm going to go to the park and have my meeting there. I'm going to have that conversation in the park.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was in my old job and I had that conversation with my boss, it would be like, okay, I can't do that. I've got to quickly rush back. He or she's going to think I'm not working. I've got
Yeah.
to be seen to be working and everything else. It's like, I'm still being effective. I'm still working. It's just a case of my environment is in the park.
And I would argue that you are probably working better and producing higher quality work because you're energized by what you're doing and it's on your terms. So you
Yeah.
optimize your performance the working way,
Yeah.
because around what works for you, right? You figure it
Yeah.
out, and that's actually a good segment to entrepreneurship and just again that journey. And that's something you're focusing on and helping people find their entrepreneurial spirit. And can you touch about like how do you start? I think there's a misconception where like if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to have it all figured out. Like it has to be this
No.
brilliant plan to make you millions of dollars, and that's when you should start. Before then, don't even think about it.
Yeah, and this is why I like the term solopreneur, because solopreneur still speaks to entrepreneurs, because it's again, it's weaving and crafting the life that you want in the way that you want. And so me unlocking your entrepreneurial spirit is, it's really about the creative side. So my business is called Creative Muscle, and
Mm-hmm.
creativity is a messy business, right? It doesn't go according to plan. And if you listen to any podcast with any seasoned entrepreneurs, they've failed, they've messed up, it hasn't worked out. And that's always been a massive challenge, right? It's like you learn from your mistakes, you learn from your failures. So actually, you know, unlocking your entrepreneurial spirit, a big part of that is being really creative, having a learning mindset, being open-minded, and learning from your failures, and being courageous and trying things out and trying things on
Mm-hmm.
in different ways, and being open to people saying this is not working, and saying, okay, let's figure out a different way to do it. And that's what the best entrepreneurs do. When something's not working, they kind of say, all right, I still have the vision, I'm still in line with the vision, but I'm just going to have to figure out a different way to get there. So this comes back to your GPS analogy in a positive way, which is you're driving down the street and you've got, this is where I'm going, but guess what? There's a diversion and there's a roadblock and there's,
Right.
these things that come up. It's called the law of dynamic steering. It's like you don't know what life is going to bring,
Mm-hmm.
but you just need to stay on point. You need to have that you need to have that vision. You need to have that impetus, that inspiration to want it, because if you don't really want it, when it gets tough, you give up. So that
Yeah.
those are the things that I'm helping people to unlock for themselves. It's not easy, and it's a tough journey, but it's going to be rewarding and fulfilling when you go through it.
So you know what I talked to a friend about, and it kind of aligned with like the vision is like if you seriously think about it, and like not just like on a high level, but what would you do if you had all the money? Like if you didn't have to worry. Hey there.
If I
No, and but like what I just like when I talked to my friend, like what would you do if you had all the money, right? You didn't have to worry like, and if you really think about it, it's honestly to me a little bit scary, but it makes you think differently about your goals because what you would do for money is very different if money wasn't an issue. But if you find something that you would do now that wasn't for money, I believe that mission would be powerful, like on your entrepreneurial journey because it's not going to just be like something that you would be doing because you made a certain amount of money, but it's like it means so much to you that you would do it regardless. I'm sure it'll change, but that was my thought
yeah.
on it.
No, and that's what I talk about, living on purpose. That's what that living on purpose is about, which is it's the thing that you do in spite of the money. It
Yeah.
almost that's the way that it's the thing that you do for free. It's even the thing that you would literally almost pay to do
Mm-hmm.
because it's so meaningful and fulfilling. So one of the things what used to, it doesn't happen so much, interestingly enough, because I think people are awakening to it. One of the things when people would come and speak to me and it's like, well, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Money would be definitely one of those things. And I'm like, okay, tell me what you would do with the money. So instead of saying I want to be earning 100,000 a year, I want to earn 6 million or whatever it is, what would you be doing once you got the money, and focus on that thing? And what's quite interesting and quite scary is that's when they don't know again. It's like, I don't know. So you'd have the money, but you don't know what you do. Yeah, no, I don't know. So we lost that technique of imagineering our life into what could be. So
Yeah.
my thing is right now, what are your energizers today? And the more you can lean into those energizers and have them on a day to day, the much better quality of life that you're going to get. And one of the reasons why I think people have burnout, which I think is a big thing at the moment, is because they're too distant from their energizers, whether that's walking in nature, being around family, having meaningful conversations with friends. I'm not just talking about going out to a bar and getting lots of drinks and everything else, like having really meaningful conversations,
Yeah.
playing with their pets, whatever it might be. so many people are too far from their energizers, or when they are connected to their energizers, they're so distracted that they're not able to embrace it and experience it. So I think
Yeah.
those are some of the key things that I see that people are really struggling, and they're out of alignment. They're
Yeah.
doubling down and working hard to live this life of somebody else, and it's not nourishing them, it's not fulfilling them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Earl, I'm looking at the time, and we could just go on and on. Like this is in our first call. I was like, it's going to be 15 minutes, and we're an hour into it, right? So I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to wrap up. I want to just talk about your programs. Like you're doing amazing work. If you hear Earl talk, he's amazing. Just like a genuinely good human being who cares, can hear the wisdom. Like work with him. How can people reach out to you? Where do they find you? How do they work with you?
Yeah, so the best way, one of the easiest ways is just via LinkedIn. I am on the other social media platforms, but I tend to go on LinkedIn every day because that's generally where I find professionals who are in the corporate world who have got certain skill sets that they can unlock for crafting the life that they want through a side hustle or a side business. They don't have to just leave their job, um, and then also go into a fully fledged solopreneur. But one of the things that I'm putting together is I'm putting together a program. It's likely to be a 6 week program to help people to embody what it means to be a solopreneur. And what I mean by that is there's lots of programs that tell you this is what you need to do. You need to do this to earn 6 figures. You need to do this to get an audience of 50,000 followers. You need to do the, and it's all about what you need to do. There's very few things that speak to how to be a solopreneur, how to be successful in your own way. That's the key thing. It's not successful in your own terms. So how do you get that inner alignment? How are you connected to your values? How are you speaking to yourself? How's your inner voice having a negative or positive effect on you? How are you embracing and working with your fears? And transforming and transmuting that energy so it makes you more productive. How do you get that alignment working and get that clarity of vision and move forward, and motivation and resilience and inspiration? Those are the things that are the difference that make the difference. So it's really about how to embody that. And that's what the program is about. It's about embodying your entrepreneurial spirit and unlocking those things to live and craft the life that you want to live.
That sounds amazing. I want to check it out because so much of it is in your head, right? The self-doubt, the things like so that's the biggest part, really. Is like what's
Yeah.
in here is going to drive what happens out here.
Yeah. I mean, if I look at you as an example, right? I spoke to you last week, and since then, I think you've done 2 lives on LinkedIn, right? I haven't done one live. You've done 2, and I was on the one yesterday, and I thought that was amazing. You're doing podcasts. You've got a family. You live. You're just out there, and you're doing stuff, and your message also equally so strong. And the things that I see you doing and you've done in a short space of time, I hear people saying, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do a podcast. I can't go live on video. I can't do a live on LinkedIn or whatever it is. So, when you're totally embracing your journey, I can see it. This is why we're having a conversation. This is why we twin and we vibe. But
Yeah,
there's so many people who they've got that self-doubt. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't see myself doing that.
yeah.
But they can if they want to, if it's for
That
them.
was me. That was me 3 weeks ago, and I was like, well, I can put it off. I don't really need to. And then I also faced unemployment or for the best.
Yeah,
And now I'm doing it, and I'm just figuring it out. And sometimes, like you saw the training, I talk way too fast. I'm like, in that training, you can acknowledge it, that's okay. But I learn, and I'm like, well, next time I'm gonna do it better. And that's like
yeah,
the saving grace is that you can be doing, and you can be failing, or just thinking like I could do better, and you can. Like
yeah,
that's the thing. You don't have to be perfect. You're just like, I'm gonna just do it and try and learn, and that's gonna be the repetitive cycle, and believe in that.
yes. And that's part of the cycle. So I talk about be, do, have the life that you want. And
Yeah.
the doing is really just a way of reinforcing
Mm.
how we're being, right? So if you're being stressed, so this comes back to that whole kind of negative self-talk and everything else. If you're being stressed, if you're being scared, if you're being, that person of fear of I'm going to be sacked, I'm going to be sacked, then you start to do that. That's how we work. That's how our design works as human beings. That's what manifests. People, it becomes visceral. We can feel it
Yeah.
energetically, and that's what I'm talking about. Spirituality and the connection, right? It's like you can just tell, right? That person's walking around with the kiss of death. They feel like it, and everyone else knows it, and so everyone avoids them. So I think the key thing is once you start to do, but you do with that open mindset. It's like, yeah, okay, I've learned from that. I can slow down my speech. I can maybe, focus on one subject, or I can expand it to multiple subjects. It's whatever it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you
Well,
start to have those results.
absolutely. Absolutely. Again, Earl, we should just do this all the time. I feel like we're going to do this regularly because Earl, it's fantastic. So much. But we know where to find you. So also creativemuscle.co.uk. I love
Yep.
from the calm, just like some more excitement in there. So find you everywhere on LinkedIn at creativemuscle.co.uk.
Yeah.
In our email, I will also share that all in the description so you can contact all those. He's amazingly accessible, has these great programs. Check him out. And I like to finish up our interviews with just 3 rapid fire kind of questions. So
Okay.
just come out with like a short sentence or a couple words that come to mind when you hear this, okay? You
Okay.
ready?
I'll do my best. Yeah.
Okay. What motivates me most is
Doing what inspires me.
success to me is
Living life fully.
going off track is
Ooh, being authentically myself in my own unique way.
amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was such a blast. We should do this more often.
Absolutely. Listen, anytime. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Everybody check out Earl. Share with us on social media what you thought what resonated with you, his great thoughts, like any questions for him, and just let's keep the conversation going. And cheers to a friend who needs this, okay? Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Anya. Thanks.